Hi friends, my name is Mackenzie, also known as Emtothethird on Instagram, Ravelry, YouTube, and I run a naturally dyed yarn company where I also sell my artwork, which is usually in the form of sticker sheets, sometimes project bags, and so on. I just had a shop update this last weekend. Thank you everyone who bought some yarn and who bought sticker sheets. I'm recording this a couple of weeks before I put it out, but at the moment there is a ton of yarn and stickers and goodies in the shop, so if you're interested, head down below. Also, last week my video was a little bit different. I am preparing for a cross-country move in less than 6 months, and so I went through my yarn stash. You can check that out right here, and some of the yarn is listed on Ravelry and available for purchase, so if you are interested in that, I will also put a link down below. And yeah, this is episode 26 of the Emtothethird Knitting Podcast. I've gotten a ton of viewers recently, which I'm really grateful for. It's been really awesome connecting with you, and I wanted to bring up that if you haven't already, we have a Slack community for the podcast, and there is a link down below to sign up. And basically what it is a message board that has different channels about different topics that you can jump in to talk about our community with. We host usually about thrice monthly Zoom knit nights, which are super fun. So if you are looking for some remote knitting community, then definitely check that out and come knit with us. It's super fun. Yeah, I think that's everything that I want to mention in terms of just admin-y type stuff. Yeah, I've got a few finished objects, which I'm very proud of, in addition to a couple of whips, some mending, and I usually don't talk about acquisitions. That's something that I feel pretty strongly about, but I was sent, so I purchased a knitting book from a friend of mine who's local to the Boston area, and she added a couple extra goodies that are super cute, and so I thought I would show those off to you today, but that'll be at the end. So yeah, let's get into it. So first off, you've mostly seen this done, but I did weave in the ends and add buttons. So this is the pick and mix cardigan for my little nibbling who is due later this year. My grandma actually sent me the buttons because I did not have any in my stash. So I think I actually showed them on the last podcast episode. They were just like on a vintage little card, which was super cute. And I also finished the inside to cover the raw steek. Ooh, this button is stuck a little bit. Okay. So I wanted to show you that. So I just took this, it's actually bias tape that I had, and I kept it folded, and I just sewed it, hand sewed it along that edge. So I just think it's super darling, and the buttons were a perfect match. So thank you, Yaya, for sending them to me and helping me finish the first of what I assume to be many nibbling projects. The other long-standing whip that I finished, which it was funny because in the last episode I was like, there's gonna be a weekend where I sit down and watch a TV show and just like crank it out, and that is 100% what happened. So this is the Creostall shawl out of naturally dyed bedhead fibers. Their fingering weight, which I really love. It's like this blushy pink, and Also, like I said, it was pretty boring to knit, but wonderful to wear, and that is super true. I've been wearing it a lot. I have this gray wool, like long cardigan that I thrifted, and it just like coordinates really nicely with it, so I've been wearing both of them a lot. It's just super comfy cozy and looks nice. The drape is really nice and I like the fabric a lot. So yeah, that was nice. I ended up watching this series on Acorn TV, which I think I subscribed to through Amazon, and it's like all British like TV, but there's a lot of like British procedurals and crime dramas. And the one that I ended up watching was more mystery. It's based off of an Agatha Christie novel, and it was called And Then There Was One. And it was this cool, yeah, it was good. Poldark was in it. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Kay and I watched it. I did not think that Kay would be interested, but they ended up watching the whole series, which I think is like 3 hours. I think it's 3 hours. And there is a death by a knitting needle, so it's relevant. My last finished object, I don't actually think I ended up showing these off in the last episode, although I think I talked about them. It's these socks that are for Kay. They've already been worn. The yarn is a yarn that we bought when we were in California for Kay's brother's wedding. So I think that's almost 3 years ago. I bought 2 skeins, one that I knit immediately, and then this one's been kind of hanging out. It's by Lollipop Yarns, so it's like a superwash merino nylon base, and just really nice stripes. I have been noticing for myself that I'm really liking this, like, this isn't quite 3 inches, but in general, like the 3-inch cuff, like I did on this sample back here. And then as always, I do top down, big ol' cuff, big long, or big ol' like ribbing section, and then this cuff area, and then a reinforced heel with some garter edges, and then I like to do this rounded toe so the decreases are like spaced out a little bit more, which I think I've talked about in the past. So yeah, Kay is really liking those, and now that I have talked about them, I will let them continue to wear them. So I was like, you can't make them too dirty, so I can show them off. Yeah, so those are all my FOs, which I feel pretty good about. And I wanted to show you that I'm trying to keep, well, one of the things is that I've been noticing that I am, like, I have a lot of swatches that I've made that end up just sort of like, I'm like, what do I do with these? And I don't necessarily not want to keep them, but I also don't really know what to do with them. So I had the idea to start like a knitting journal, and I actually bought a few journals. I sort of like the, like, it's a little bit bigger than 6 by 4 inches. So I bought a few different notebooks. One was actually for journaling for the year. A couple were like sketchbooks that I bought, and I was like, okay, one of these will work to keep my swatches in, but none of them were big enough to actually hold my swatches. So I ended up settling for this old one that I had written, God, I don't know, like 3 notes in during my grad school degree. And I was just like, okay, I'll just take out like the first page that has writing on it, and then I'll just repurpose it to knitting. So I made this cute little front, and then my mom actually gave me these a while ago, and I put them in my Come on. I put them in like my knitting books that I have, just in case I ever lend them out. And this is where I put my, oops, something fell out. This is where I put my swatches for this sweater that I'm going to talk about next. So I started off with a size 2. 3 was the actual size that it was supposed to be, but that also was too small. And I settled on a 4. And I kept this here so I didn't have to count them, or I kept these Post-its on top of the swatches so that I didn't have to count them every time I like needed to. And then I also made some like little notes about when I started, when I cast on, and whatnot. So it's kind of like a scrapbook about knitting. And then I also have some like design that I'm working on notes. And then this is where every month I'm hoping to do a little section about what I finished. So I have a little Instax Polaroid camera that I, you know, took a picture of every one of the things, and then I wrote just like little notes, kind of like what I'm talking to you about, like where I bought the yarn and whatnot. So I also have, I'm working on a sock yarn, so I kept my notes for that here. And as I finish stuff, I take a little picture of it. And I just, as I did that, realized I have another FO that I have to go grab out of my bag. Burb. So I didn't talk about this last time, but I think I mentioned it on Instagram that like a bunch of people were spinning, and I was like, I gotta pull out my wheel. So I have this really awesome bat that I bought at the beginning of Shelter in Place that was by Loop Fiber Studios. And it's really cool. It's like a center pull bat that is like self-striping. So I bought that, and I'm pretty sure it's 100% merino. And Moose got into it at some point and sort of like tore up the outside, and I was like, ugh, and I didn't really want to deal with figuring out if I could still spin from it. But so I ended up starting to spin with it, and I was like, oh, this is super nice to do. Like, you just pull it out from the center. I made some really nice singles, and then because I love chain plying, but mostly because I wanted to maintain the gradient of the stripes, I chain plied it. And I got this gorgeous skein, which I will insert a photo of here. Sorry that I couldn't resist. I did want to like show you the skein and the ball wound up, but I wanted to knit something. So I ended up knitting a little like mitt and hat set. So these are the mitts, which I think are super cute. Just little like fingerless gloves. And these work really well for me because I actually tend to run warm and my hands are not usually cold. I will wear mittens like when we're shoveling the car out, but these actually work really well for me even doing that. And then I made a coordinating hat. So it's kind of a cute little thing. This pattern that I used, that I followed very basically, is the Waiting for Mitts. Oh, I'm sorry. Waiting for Winter Mitten pattern by Susan B. Anderson. So that's what I followed to get these. And then this, because I had gauge from these, I just figured out I usually knit like a 22-inch round hat, give or take an inch. And I did this in fisherman rib, which I'm really happy with, but I almost ran out of yarn, and so, you know, I don't really want to mess up my hair, but it's pretty cute. So, yeah, I've been wearing them a lot. I think they're like a really nice set. They're very comfy. I am a little worried because the fiber is merino, so these are probably going to pill quite a bit, but maybe after I de-pill them once, they won't be so bad. They'll kind of felt on themselves, so, but they're super warm, super comfy, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So, forgot about that. So then, I showed you the swatches in my little notebook for the green mustardy cardigan that I'm knitting, that is in the Zolda pattern called the Stockbridge. I mentioned that I was sort of getting ready to cast it on during the last episode, and I have cast it on, but I wanted to talk first about the fact that I'm using Quince & Co. So a few months ago, one of their designers, Leela Robin, talked about some exploitative workplace practices that were going on at Quince & Company. And when that happened, I was like, so, like, it's just, in general, disappointing. Like, we're such a small industry, and you want to have hope that these small companies that are operating in the US and seem to be doing quote unquote good, whatever that means, are operating ethically. And that happened, and I was like, you know, so I made the decision at that point that I already had this yarn, but I made the decision that I wouldn't be buying any more from Quince, like giving them any of my money. So that happened, and then over this past weekend, there was a post that on Instagram that I will link below, from a woman who, I can't remember her name right now, I'm sorry, who talked about their hiring practices and said that she was going through this extensive interview process, coming up with marketing plans, and the person who was hiring her after this like drawn out interview process basically said, "Can you teach my girlfriend, who I can pay less than you, this plan that you came up with? Because she's interested in it, and it just makes more sense for us to hire someone who we can pay less than you." And so since then, a lot of other people have been coming out with stories about going through the hiring process and facing similar situations, in addition to the fact that Layla's issues haven't been resolved despite Quince issuing statements that are really non-statements. So regardless, unless a huge shift changes, which I hate to be pessimistic about it, but I don't really anticipate happening, I won't be buying from Quince anymore. I do feel okay because I bought this yarn from a local yarn store in Boston, and I know that they pay for that up front. So, you know, I don't feel, you know, it's sort of like this complicated push and pull of ethics and we can talk around it for a long time. But I just want to say that I personally will not be supporting quints anymore unless something gives. And I am continuing to knit my sweater out of quints, and I didn't feel like it would be appropriate not to mention that decision and to address like what has been going on. So if you want more information, I'll link a bunch of posts where people are talking about it below. I'd refer you to Jacqueline Cieslak's stories, where she really encapsulated sort of like from the beginning when Leela first spoke about it until now. Yeah, so that's what's up. And and I am knitting a sweater out of Quince & Co. Honey, which unfortunately is still a great color, but not worth exploitative labor practices. So so the Stockbridge cardigan is knit from the bottom up, and it just says cast on. I think it's like 300 and I don't even know stitches. It was a lot of stitches. But since this cardigan is, as I've mentioned, a slow and steady project with a lot of stockinette, boring in the sense that it's just a stockinette crewneck cardigan that I predict will get a lot of wear from me, I want to make sure all of the finishing details are like, so I decided to do a like over 300 stitch tubular cast on, which I am so happy with. I think it looks great. Fits really, it like, you know, stretches nicely, but it's not, sometimes it flares, and that's not happening here. And it's 1x1 rib. So I also twisted, what did I do? For the knit stitches, I wrapped my yarn the opposite way around the needle, and then I purled normally, and then when you come back the other way, your knit stitches are twisted, so I purled into those to correct them. And it just makes the ribbing look so nice, because I have the problem where my like 1x1 rib, the knit stitches are always super loose, so that kind of corrected that problem for me. So that was super nice. The first time I heard about that was from my friend Melissa, talking about doing that on a project. I can't remember which project she was, but I'm gonna link her YouTube channel down below. She has really awesome like long videos where she documents like the whole project, like the whole process of working on a knit project, and it takes a lot of patience, I know, and for her to do those videos, and they're really well done. So definitely go take a look at her channel. So anyway, I've knit quite a bit on this because I'm not really working on anything else. I have started to do the ribbing on Kay's Unbearable hoodie, but yeah, that's, I mean, I've knit that much since we have spoken last. And for like fingering weight sweater on 4 needles, I feel like that's pretty good. I love Isolde's shaping because she does like waist shaping and then bust shaping, and it's just, every time I've knit one of her sweaters, it's very flattering. And I don't expect this to be any different. So yeah, I've just been working on that. And then the other thing, I'm blaming Emily for this. So I took a video, which I'll insert here, of just like a bunch of skeins that I pulled out. And that's the nice thing about having my like open shelving of yarn, is that I can kind of be inspired by it. And so I took out all of these sort of like natural gray, brown, pinky, orange skeins of yarn, and I was like, I don't know, like if I'm gonna do anything with this, I just like am looking at them and they're pretty right now. and I'm just appreciating them. And Emily like messaged me and was like, you should make like, okay, like let's figure this out, you should make like a patchwork coat. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna do that. I was like, I guess. So I started just like going on to Ravelry, and I was just kind of browsing at patchwork stuff, and let me tell you, the number of like Vogue knitting from the 90s with like primary color patchwork sweaters with like embroidered sunflowers on them was many. But in my searching, I found this really awesome pattern by a contemporary designer that makes, it's like patchwork front, patchwork back, patchwork sleeves, and then you like knit the pieces that aren't made of patchwork. So there's like a side piece, you do the ribbing, you do the underarm, and I was like, oh, this is dope. So I'm gonna put a picture here of the pattern and the name of it because right now I'm blanking, I can't remember. So I pulled all my yarn. This is ridiculous. And look at that, look at this basket of beauty. And I started making a couple squares. So some of these are fingering weight and it calls for bulky. So this one, which is out of Mending, which I talked about last time and said is not suitable for socks, but is suitable for a patchwork jumper. I quadrupled the strand to get gauge, and then I blocked it. So I have this one, and actually I'm not sure what I did with the other one. Okay, well you're just gonna have to trust me that I have two. So the pattern's super cool, and it's allowing me to use a bunch of these yarns that I love but just wasn't sure what to do with. So I'll keep you updated on that. It's going kind of slow because I'm focusing on the cardigan, but I am excited about this. So I don't plan on losing steam anytime soon. I also, for the first time in a very long time, actually I'm realizing that I'm lying, but I was gonna say that I don't have socks on the needles, but that's not true because I have my like scrappy helical knitting stripe sock, which I haven't touched, as I predicted was probably going to be the case. So that's okay, it's fine. Just gonna, you know, continue to go with the flow. And like I said, no shame here. Like, whips can sit. I know myself. I know I will get to them and either rip them out or knit them, whichever comes first, and that's okay with me. So now, okay, I'm going to talk about mending, and then I will talk about my little package of goodies from my friend Heather. Okay, so last week I talked about Mending and my whole blah 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 with that. So I did patch one of the holes here with some mezcla because it has nylon in it and I know it wears really well. But what I wanted to share with you, so I left one of the holes, I think it's on the other sock, because I'm going to take a break in a sec and show you this cool tool that is not necessary but really cool. So for Christmas, my mom got me this darning loom. So I will definitely link to the shop below, and I'm going to cut away in a sec and do a little tutorial mending the other sock, but it's super cool. It looks like this, which looks crazy, but this goes in the sock and then this comes on the outside, and it makes it very easy to create a little woven patch over a hole, and you hold it in place with a rubber band. So yeah, they're beautifully made, and you can get one from Etsy, from the seller. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun with that. It's, like I said, it's not necessary. You don't need it. I also have my favorite, like, darning egg, which isn't really an egg, tool. And but yeah, it just makes it easier, quicker. So I'm gonna cut away, show you patching a hole and how to finish it, and then we'll come back.
So here we go. This is the little loom, and like I literally showed you seconds before, it is this little wooden disc with this little metal, basically, piece that holds the warp threads. So you insert the wood piece into the sock if you were doing this on a sock, or just like under the fabric if you were doing it on a flat piece of fabric, and then position the loom on top and hold it in place with the rubber band. I noticed as I was getting the sock ready that there is a hole, but there's also a weak point in the fabric right next to it. So I sort of just centered the whole weak spot, like in the middle of the wood. So to start off, you're gonna warp your loom, essentially. So this is the way that I have seen people do it, and the way that the instructions tell you to do it, which is by taking individual pieces for each hook of the warp thread. Now, I found that I was sort of following on the bottom a row of stitches all the way across, and just with my gauge and the way that it was on the loom, there were too many hooks, so I actually skipped a couple towards the end. So the other thing about doing it this way, where each individual warp thread is separate, is that if you wanted to create a pattern, so I've seen people make patches like over a plaid shirt, and they'll copy it so that it's basically an invisible mended patch. So there are reasons to do it, but I think, like, my gut instinct says that if you were to just use one piece of thread and anchor it along the bottom, and then go up and catch the hook and come down and anchor it, that it would probably be okay. I'll have to experiment with that. But yeah, so this is the way that it says to do it, so I'm following the directions. So now I'm going to start doing the weft. And what I do is I anchor it along the side, and the position that the hooks are in, whether to the right or the left, help lift either one side or the other, and that's how you can do the weaving. So yeah, I'm anchoring it here on the side, and I also, just as on the bottom, I try to follow like a single row of stitches. When I'm along the side, I try to follow a single column of stitches just to make it look neater. So now I'm putting my needle through, which is made easier because the pegs leaning to one side, like I said, sort of lift up one side of the two strands. So now I'm just going to go back and forth until I get to the top, anchoring each stitch along the side. I learned that I basically learned not to do it too tight. So you don't want, if you do it too tight, you'll sort of warp the fabric. So I was trying to keep it pretty loose. And I also realized that when I stick the needle in, I can sort of push down to tighten up the strand of yarn that I just slid through. Also, I'm sorry that the lighting is going in and out when I was filming this. It was cloudy and I didn't realize because I was so focused. So yeah, I basically just keep doing that, making sure that my tension isn't too tight and that all the stitches look as neat as possible as I'm going. And like I said, like, this isn't necessary. You don't need it. You can definitely do a patch like this with just something flat. You don't even need a darning egg. You could use an orange or something. But it's just like a cool tool, and it makes it a little bit easier. And I definitely think it makes it easier to do patterns, you know, if you wanted a more invisible mend. So this is the point where I'm starting to finish it up. And you'll notice that the top isn't attached by anything. So really, if you do this, you're just making a little pocket that's attached at the bottom and the sides, but the top is open. So yeah, you could stick like a little tiny, teeny pocket square on the bottom of your foot. But so right now I'm starting to I take the loops off of the hooks and then I pull the warp threads to tighten the top and get rid of those loops. But again, I don't want to do it too tight because it will warp the fabric. So yeah, just be mindful of that when you're doing any kind of darned patch. It's kind of easy to do. So now, because that top is open and I don't really want it to be, I'm just whip stitching it down so that it is on the fabric. And you don't have to leave the loom on at this point, but I find it just a little bit easier to keep the tension. So now I'm going to flip it inside out. I'm going to weave in the weft thread that I just used to whip stitch. And now I'm going to pull all of these loose ends to the opposite side and also weave them in. So funny enough, I couldn't find a lot of information about how to finish it off. I saw a couple of videos that was like, and then you just weave the ends in, but they were doing it on like a woven like fabric, like a denim. And I was like, I mean, I guess so. So I'm doing basically the way that I would finish any knitting project where I'm weaving the ends in. I'm not particularly worried or being particularly careful because it's at the bottom of a sock and I feel like I can't feel it because it's very thin and it's gonna felt. So I wasn't too precious about this part, for better or worse. I don't know. I'll let you know how it like holds up. But yeah, so I actually threaded 2 strands at a time because it was a lot of ends to weave in. And then just went through a few of those like reverse stockinette bumps. And then I cut it leaving a little bit of a fringe because I did really want it to felt and I didn't want it to pop through when like to the other side when I washed it. So yeah, there's my finished little patch. I think it looks really good. And I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial. And again, like I said, not necessary, but kind of fun. So yeah.
My friend Heather has a shop called Needle and Pearl. That's her Instagram handle. And I saw that she had this book from Pom Pom, which I was really excited about. And it did not disappoint. It's super beautiful. I love the colors they use. I love the way they talk about it. It's just like a cool... The way they talk about like knitting reminds me a lot of Elizabeth Zimmerman because they're like talking about the actual construction and math, but they're also including patterns. So it's a really beautiful book. The colors are beautiful, and I was so stoked that they have really diverse models. I think we're seeing more people of color in knitting publications, but we really like haven't seen a lot of like more masculine presenting folks just like wearing the same garments, and so I was really excited and happy to see that in this. So I got that book from her, and I also ordered, she makes these, you know, little leather notions pouches, and this color obviously spoke to me. Come on. So cute. Open it, and you got this little pouch for notions. And I just got rid of, that's like another thing that I went through in addition to my yarn and books, is I went through my stitch markers, because I recently like sort of organized my desk and bought all of these things to go in the drawers so that I could like keep track of things better. I've been wanting to buy those for so long, and I just like, it never felt like it was right to spend whatever, 10 bucks, 20 bucks on just like things to organize your desk. But I did it, and I finally had a place where all my stitch markers could live, and I had so many. And some of them I avoid because they're not my favorite. So I got rid of like a ton of them, which are also going to the store local to me called Make and Mend. Anyway, so Heather is super sweet. She's been so supportive of my shop. Since I started. We sort of met in person at the Boston Farm and Fiber Festival, which of course this year is not happening because of the pandemic. But she's just like really awesome. And she also had a really great story highlight about the Quince & Co drama, and just talking about sexism in the workplace and racism in the workplace. And yeah, so I'm just happy to return the support, buy that book from her, and she added some extra goodies. One of which is these pencils which say reorganizing my knits, which if you don't know is from Schitt's Creek, and they're beautiful. And I think she had them made by Calliope Pencil Factory, which is like, I think local. I think it's a local company. So these are going into rotation at my desk, which I'm super excited about. They're so cute. And then she included this very sweet ruler that was made by Katrinkles that has their logo on it. So that also like lives on my desk. It's so sweet. And this is like usually the size that I need for knitting stuff, so perfect. And then last, this is so cool. So, oh, I'm holding it backwards. So this hangs, and then you can put your circular needles in it and like stash them on like a pegboard, which is exactly what I have. So I'm excited to put that up. I don't have a lot of I have interchangeable needle sets, but the few, like I have a lot of size 1, sorry. I have a lot of size 1 circular needles for socks, and that's what I use for finishing. So I feel like I can never find them. So I think this will be really nice to like hang up on my pegboard with all of my tools to keep it in place. So I'll take a picture of that when I put it up, and I'll link her shop down below in case you're interested in any of her awesome wares. So thank you so much, Heather. I really enjoyed getting my little package from you. The last thing, very last thing I promise that I wanted to talk about was my 2 favorite baby books. I'm pretty sure that I have talked about these before long ago, but since I have been thinking about baby knits again, I have a baby to knit for. I pulled out my 2 favorite baby books and my favorite baby pattern, and I wanted to share those with you. So the first one is this, and they're like very well loved at this point, is the Kelborn Woolens, right? Yeah, Kelborn Woolens Baby Collection. So this just has a lot of sweet patterns. I am actually, Kay and I are both working on a version of this right now, so I guess that's another whip, but I'll show it to you next time. And let's see, I've also knit this cutie little vest, which is super adorable. So yeah, I've been going through this and just kind of, I wish that I could be someone who was just like, I'm gonna do one after the other, but I don't know why my brain doesn't like to operate that way. So that's one of my favorite books. The other one, which I think a lot of people love, is from Issayer, and it is All You Knit Is Love. So cute. So this, it really features like their very like rustic yarn. I've knit this for my cousin when she was expecting a couple years ago. Such a sweet little dress. And one of the ones that I am like desperate to knit because it's so cute. You should go look on Ravelry at this pattern because all the baby butts in it, little diaper butts, adorable. If you don't think diaper butts are adorable, I don't know what to tell you, man. Little balloon pants, so cute. So I want to knit those for sure. So that's the second one. Both of these were actually introduced to me when I worked at A Verb for Keeping Warm, which is very sweet and fun. And then the last one, of course, is the Elizabeth Zimmerman Baby Surprise sweater, cardigan. What do they call it? Baby Surprise jacket. So this one's also super fun and like unique. So I'll probably be knitting a couple more of those. I did knit one of these last year, and it is in my stash also to go to my nibbling. So, and then I'm also going to, once we're done with the cardigan that I'm working on now, I'm going to cast on a baby blanket, which is from the ye old Stitchin' Bitch, which is called, I think it's like the Big Bad Baby Blanket or something like that. But it's basically just, there's like a seed stitch border and then 4 blocks that are in stockinette and reverse stockinette, and then they flip flop. I also knit one of those for my cousins. It's like a super basic pattern. I already have yarn for it, so yeah, it's kind of nice to just have one of those projects. Well, all of my projects right now are sort of mindless knitting, but whatever. That's why I'm not casting it on yet. Yeah, so I think that's it. It's quite a lot, but that's what I got to talk about with you today. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me. Thanks so much to all my new subscribers. Leave a comment down below if you got this far. I love hearing from you. If you're interested in joining the Slack group, please know that you are so welcome. It's a really fun community. I'd love to have you at the knit nights. And yeah, I'll see you again real soon. Yeah, that's it from me. Bye.